When did you give someone the no take-backs treatment? My husband Hieronymus told me on a Tuesday in March that he wanted a divorce. We'd been married for 11 years. We had 2 kids, a son named Marcus, who was 9, and a daughter named Beatrix, who was 6. Hieronymus was a partner at a private equity firm in Manhattan. I'd quit my career as a corporate attorney to raise our children. I'd done it for 9 years. The thing is, Hieronymus had been having an affair with his 31-year-old executive assistant Persephone. He'd been seeing her for 14 months. I'd known about it for 9 of those months. I'd hired a private investigator the moment I'd suspected. I'd been documenting, I'd been building, I'd been waiting. The night he told me he'd come home at 7 p.m., he'd put the kids to bed, he'd come into our bedroom, he'd sat down on the edge of the bed. He'd said, "Octavia, I'm leaving you. I've met someone. I want a quick, clean divorce. I don't want to fight about anything. I just want this to be over." I'd looked at him. I'd asked, "Who is she?" "Someone at work, Persephone." His face had moved through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. "How did you know?" "I've known for 9 months. I have photos. I have hotel receipts. I have flight records. I have email transcripts. I have a lot of things." He'd sat there with his mouth open. Then he'd said, "Octavia, this doesn't have to be ugly. I'll be generous. I'll give you the house. I'll pay for everything. Let's just be adults about this." I'd smiled. "Of course, Hieronymus. Send me what you're thinking and I'll have my lawyer review it." He'd looked relieved. He'd kissed my forehead. He'd been so relieved he hadn't noticed how fast I'd agreed. I'd called my lawyer the next morning. Her name was Magnolia. She'd been my best friend since law school. She'd been waiting for this call for 9 months. She had everything ready. She also knew something Hieronymus didn't. Hieronymus had signed a prenuptial agreement before our wedding. His parents had insisted. The agreement had been heavily one-sided in his favor. It protected his family wealth. He'd had me sign it 3 weeks before our wedding. I'd been 26. I'd been in love. I'd signed it without a thorough review. What Hieronymus had forgotten is that the agreement had a sunset clause he'd never noticed. Section 12.3 stated that the agreement had to be reaffirmed by both parties in writing every 7 years. If either party failed to reaffirm, the agreement became void. Hieronymus had never reaffirmed. The 7-year mark had passed. The agreement was void. I'd known for 2 years. Magnolia had pointed it out when I'd brought my files to her when the affair had started. We'd been quietly setting up for 2 years. The other thing Hieronymus didn't know was that I hadn't actually quit being a lawyer. I'd been doing freelance corporate consulting under my maiden name for the entire 9 years of stay-at-home motherhood. I had a separate account he didn't know about. I had $840,000 in cash that wasn't on any joint account. The divorce filing happened the following Monday. Hieronymus's lawyer had been a man named Reginald who'd represented his family for decades. Reginald had presented Hieronymus's proposal. It had assumed the prenup was still valid. It had offered me $300,000 and the house. He'd kept his entire investment portfolio, his business interests, his family trust, his apartment in the city, his vacation home in Aspen. Magnolia had said, "Reginald, we've reviewed your client's proposal. We'd like to counter." Reginald had smiled. Of course. Magnolia had handed him a folder. Reginald had opened it. He'd started reading. His face had changed. He'd looked at Hieronymus. He'd said, "Hieronymus, we need a private moment." They'd been gone for 45 minutes. They'd come back. Reginald had looked pale. Hieronymus had looked sick. The folder had contained 3 things: a legal opinion confirming the prenup was void due to failure to reaffirm, documentation of Hieronymus's affair with Persephone, including hotel receipts that proved he'd been using marital funds, including a $47,000 trip to the Maldives, plus an apartment he'd rented for Persephone, and documentation of Hieronymus having moved $900,000 of marital assets into a private account in the Cayman Islands during the affair. Hieronymus's voice had been shaking. "Octavia, what is all this?" "It's what my lawyer found while we were preparing for the divorce you wanted. We can settle this. I'll give you more." Magnolia had smiled. "Hieronymus, let's discuss what reasonable looks like now." The new proposal was 50% of all marital assets, including the investment portfolio, the family trust contributions made during marriage, the apartment, the vacation home, and full child support based on his actual income, plus full reimbursement of the funds he'd moved offshore, plus attorney's fees. Hieronymus had agreed to all of it. I'd left with $11.2 million. The house, the vacation home, custody of our children. The divorce was final in 8 months. His affair with Persephone had ended within a month of the financial settlement. She'd been with him for what he could give her. The kids see him every other weekend. They love their dad. He's a good father. He's just a terrible husband. I've been single for 2 years. I've been building my consulting practice. I've been raising our kids in the house he gave me. But last week, I got a call from Persephone. She'd asked to meet for coffee. She told me she had something to tell me about Hieronymus. It wasn't about her and him. It was about something he'd done before I'd ever met him. I met Persephone at a coffee shop the next day. I picked a place on the other side of town where nobody would know either of us. She was already in a booth. She looked thinner than I remembered. She had a manila folder on the table next to her coffee. I sat down across from her. She said, "I'm not here because I feel guilty about the affair. I found something on his old laptop before I moved out of the apartment he rented me. I copied it. I've been sitting on it for a year and a half because I didn't know what to do." She slid the folder across the table. I opened it. Inside were printed emails, maybe 15 or 20 pages. The dates were from years before I'd ever met Hieronymus. The emails were between Hieronymus and Reginald. They talked about a woman like she was a problem that needed to be solved. Persephone said, "He was married before you. He got it annulled." Reginald made it disappear. I felt my whole body go cold. I kept reading. A short marriage. An annulment under sealed records. Payments to keep this woman quiet. One email from Reginald said, "The NDA is airtight. She won't talk, but you need to disclose this if you ever marry again, or any future prenup could be challenged." Below it was Hieronymus's reply. 5 words. "I'm not disclosing anything. This never happened." I put the papers down. My hands were steady, but something inside me was not. I'm a lawyer. I understood what I was looking at right away. Hieronymus had entered our marriage under false pretenses. He had hidden a prior marriage. He had told his own attorney to bury it. I sat there in that coffee shop booth looking at those emails, and I thought about myself at 26, signing papers 3 weeks before my wedding because I was in love and I trusted him. I thought about how he'd stood next to me at the altar, knowing he'd done this before. I looked up at Persephone. "Why now?" She took a breath. "Because he called me last week. He told me he's going to file to modify custody. He says he wants 50-50. He says his therapist says he's ready. I thought you should know who you're actually dealing with before he walks into a courtroom and plays the changed man. I closed the folder. Thank you. I drove home. I pulled into my driveway and turned off the car, and I just sat there for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and let my brain do what it does. I picked up my phone. I called Magnolia. I told her everything. The folder, the emails, the secret marriage, the custody modification. There was a long pause. Then Magnolia said, "Bring me the folder. Tonight." I said, "I'll be there in an hour." She said, "Octavia, we beat him once. If he's coming back for more, we'll be ready." Magnolia went through every page of those emails that night. When she was done, she put her pen down and looked at me, and the look on her face was not the look I wanted to see. "Octavia, these are printouts from Persephone's possession. We don't have chain of custody. We don't have the original laptop. We don't have metadata. A judge might not even let us introduce these." I felt something tighten in my chest. What do you mean, might not? If Hieronymus's legal team challenges the source, they can argue Persephone could have made them up, or changed them, or pulled them out of context. We have no way to prove these came directly from his device without the device itself. My strongest weapon might be something a judge wouldn't even look at. Magnolia said, "Don't lose hope yet. Let me dig." And she did. Over the next few days, she tried to access the sealed court records for the annulment. She made calls. She filed requests. She hit walls everywhere she turned. The annulment had been filed in a different state, where Hieronymus had lived briefly in his mid-20s. The records were sealed tight. Magnolia called me Wednesday evening. "Reginald is good at what he does. Reginald didn't just help Hieronymus get out of that marriage, he erased it." I reached out to Drew, an old colleague from my law firm days who now worked in the court system in the state where the annulment had been filed. I told him I needed to verify whether a sealed case existed and whether there was any way to access it. Drew said he'd look into it quietly. Days went by. On Friday morning, Drew called me back. His voice was careful. "I found the case number. It exists, but the file is restricted. Nobody in my office can pull it without a court order. Is there anything else?" "Yeah, and this is the part that got my attention. Someone renewed the seal on these records just 8 months ago. That's not normal. Seals don't get renewed unless someone files a motion to keep them in place. Somebody is actively keeping this locked down. 8 months ago, I did the math. 8 months ago, Hieronymus had started seeing his therapist. 8 months ago, he'd started making noises about being a better father. And 8 months ago, someone had gone to a courthouse in another state and filed paperwork to make sure his first marriage stayed buried. The therapy wasn't growth, it was preparation. He was betting that I wouldn't look. He was betting wrong. A few days later, Hieronymus called me. Sunday afternoon. The kids were in the backyard. His voice was warm, friendly. The kind of voice you practice in a mirror or with a therapist who tells you to lead with connection. He went through the dates, asked about Marcus's soccer tournament, asked if Beatrix still liked her art class, and then, almost casually, like it was just another thought passing through his head, he said, "I've been thinking a lot about being more present, Octavia. Not just on my weekends, more than that. I've changed. My therapist says I've done real work. I want to be a bigger part of Marcus and Beatrix's lives. I hope you'll support that." 2 weeks ago, I would have heard a father trying to be better, but now every word sounded different. Every sentence sounded like something that had been rehearsed and tested and shaped for an audience. Not me, a judge. I kept my voice even. "Of course. Whatever's best for the kids." He hung up. I put my phone down and my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the effort of keeping my voice still while a man who had erased an entire human being from his past told me he'd changed. I called Magnolia that night. I told her about Drew's findings. I told her about the seal being renewed 8 months ago. I told her about the phone call. We need the original woman. We need her to come forward. I agree. Without her, all we have are emails that might not be admissible and sealed records we can't access. Her testimony is her own. It doesn't need chain of custody. Then I need to find her. Octavia, if Hieronymus finds out you're looking for this woman, he'll go to war. And he still has money. Not as much as before, but enough. I know the risk. I'm doing it anyway. The next morning I started digging. I went through every page of those emails again with a pen and a notebook, pulling out every fragment I could find. A first name, a reference to where she'd been living, a mention of the law firm that had handled her side of the annulment. I'm a lawyer, not an investigator. So after 2 days of getting nowhere on my own, I called Antonio. He was the same person I'd used when I first suspected Hieronymus was having the affair. He was careful, quiet, and he knew how to find people who didn't want to be found. I told him what I needed. Antonio listened without interrupting. When I was done, he was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Give me 48 hours. He called me back in 36. He had a phone number. He had a city. He had enough to confirm this person was real and still alive. But before he gave me the number, he said, "Octavia, this woman signed an NDA, a real one, backed by real money and real lawyers. She might hang up on you the second you say his name. Or worse, she might call Hieronymus." I told him I understood. He gave me the number. I sat with it for 2 hours. I stared at it on my phone screen while I ate lunch at my kitchen table. I thought about calling Magnolia first. I thought about waiting. And then I thought about Hieronymus walking into a courtroom asking for more time with my kids while hiding an entire erased life behind him. I dialed. It rang 4 times. A woman answered. Her voice was neutral, the way you sound when you don't recognize the number but you answer anyway. I said my name. I told her I was calling about something personal. I told her it was about a man we both knew. I said Hieronymus's name. Long silence. So long I thought she might have hung up. Then she spoke. I was wondering when someone would call. Her voice was tired. Not angry. Not scared. Just tired. Like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and had stopped being surprised by the weight. I didn't say anything right away. I let her have the space. She said, "I can't talk about this. I signed papers. They'll come after me." I kept my voice calm, the way I talk to Marcus when he's upset about something. "I'm a lawyer. I can help you understand your options, but I need to know what happened." Another pause. I could hear her breathing. "Not on the phone and not yet. I need to think about it. Take whatever time you need. I'll be here." She hung up. I put my phone down and realized my heart was pounding. She'd answered. She'd known this day would come. She hadn't hung up on me and she hadn't called Hieronymus, but she also hadn't said yes. 3 days passed. I checked my phone more than I should have. Every time it buzzed with a text or lit up with a call, I felt my chest tighten for a second before I saw who it was. It was never her. By Thursday, I was starting to lose hope. I told myself she'd made her choice. That 17 years of silence was too much to break with one phone call from a stranger. Thursday evening, I was sitting at the dining room table with Beatrix, helping her with her math homework. She was working on subtraction with borrowing and getting frustrated frustrated because she kept forgetting to cross out the number on top. I was showing her for the third time when my phone rang. It was Magnolia. I told Beatrix I'd be right back and stepped into the kitchen. Octavia. Hieronymus filed the custody modification today. 50-50 custody. And Octavia, his filing includes a character assessment from his therapist, a full written evaluation saying he's emotionally stable, committed to co-parenting, and ready for expanded responsibility. She paused. And there's more. He included a declaration from his mother saying she'll provide full-time childcare support on his custody days. She's offering to handle school pickups and drop-offs. He built this filing like a case, Octavia. He's serious. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I looked through the doorway at Beatrix, still sitting at the table, erasing a number and trying again. She had her tongue sticking out the way she does when she's concentrating really hard. Octavia, I'm here. I'm thinking. I told her I'd call her back. I went back to the dining room. I sat down next to Beatrix. I helped her finish her math worksheet. I made dinner. I gave both kids a bath. I read Marcus 2 chapters of his book. I tucked Beatrix in, and she asked me to check under her bed for monsters, and I did, even though she's almost too old for that, because she asked and because I could. I turned off their lights. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed in the quiet house, and I let myself feel it, all of it. Then at 10 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I'll meet you Saturday. I'll tell you everything, but you need to promise me something. Promise me he can never hurt me again. I read it twice. Then I typed back 2 words. I promise. I sat there in the dark, holding my phone. I thought about Marcus asking me last week, out of nowhere, while I was driving him home from practice, why Daddy doesn't live with them anymore. I'd given him the careful answer. He'd nodded and looked out the window, and I couldn't tell if he believed me. I called Magnolia, the woman from the annulment. She's ready. We meet her Saturday. Magnolia didn't ask how or why. She just said, where? I told her I'd find out. Then I said, I need you there, Magnolia, and bring everything we have. Saturday morning, I drove to a quiet restaurant outside the city with Magnolia in the passenger seat and every document we had in a folder on the back seat. The woman was already there. She was in her early 40s, put together, her clothes neat, her posture straight, but her hands gripped that coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her in one piece. We sat down across from her. I introduced Magnolia. The woman nodded, and then she started talking. I married him when I was 23. He was 25. It lasted 4 months. She paused and took a breath. He wasn't violent. I want to be clear about that. But he was a liar. A complete, total, pathological liar. He told me he was finishing law school. He was actually already working at his father's firm. He told me his family approved of me. They never knew I existed. When his parents found out, Reginald showed up at our apartment with annulment papers. Hieronymus sat in the other room while Reginald told me I had 2 choices: sign the annulment and the NDA and take a payment, or they would make my life very difficult. She looked down at her coffee. I was 23. I had no money. I signed. I asked the question I had to ask. Did Hieronymus know what his family was doing? She looked right at me. He was in the next room. He heard every word. When Reginald left, I asked Hieronymus if he was going to fight for us. He said, this is what's best for both of us. She shook her head slowly. That's what he does. He decides what's best for everyone, and then he leaves you to live with it. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, recognition, like hearing a song you already know the words to. Magnolia leaned forward. She explained calmly and clearly that the NDA had been signed under duress. A 23-year-old with no money and no lawyer of her own had been pressured by the opposing party's attorney. That NDA would not survive a challenge in front of any judge. The woman's eyes filled with tears. No one ever told me that. For 17 years, I thought I was trapped. Magnolia said, I need you to be willing to sign a declaration. You're sorry. In your own words, notarized. The woman looked at me. Will this protect those kids? I nodded. Then I'll do it. Monday morning, Magnolia filed our response. Attached was the woman's notarized declaration. Attached were the emails. Attached was a legal brief arguing that Hieronymus had a documented pattern of deception in his intimate relationships, including hiding a prior marriage, directing his attorney to suppress records, and entering a second marriage under false pretenses, and that this pattern was directly relevant to his fitness as a custodial parent and his credibility before the court. That evening, my phone rang. It was Hieronymus. His voice was different. Not warm, not polished, raw and cracked like something broken open. Octavia, what are you doing? I'm responding to your filing. Where did you get that? Who talked to you? It doesn't matter. Octavia, please. I was 25. I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You hid a marriage. You had your lawyer threaten a 23-year-old woman into silence, and you never told me. You let me marry you without knowing who you actually were. There was a long pause. Then his voice broke in a way I had never heard before. I know, and I'm not calling to fight you. I'm calling because Marcus asked me last weekend if I was a good person, and I didn't know what to say to him. Octavia, please. I'm not going to fight for 50-50. I'll withdraw the filing. I just need you to promise me that my kids won't read that woman's declaration. I need them to not know about this. Please. I was quiet for a long time. From the next room, I could hear Beatrix laughing at something on the television. That laugh, that easy little kid laugh that doesn't know anything about sealed records or NDAs or fathers who erase people. Withdraw the filing by Friday. Keep the custody arrangement we have. Continue being a good father to them on your weekends. And Hieronymus, don't ever lie to me again about anything, because I will always find out. There was a pause. Then he said, I know you will. He hung up. Hieronymus withdrew the custody filing on Wednesday, 2 days before the deadline I gave him. Reginald filed the paperwork without comment. I called the woman from the first marriage that evening. I told her the filing was withdrawn and that the NDA challenge paperwork was ready if she ever wanted to pursue it independently. She thanked me. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. You know, he picked women who were strong enough to survive what he did. That's something. I said, that's not a compliment to him. She laughed. It was the first time she'd laughed during any of our conversations. That Friday night, I sat on the back porch after the kids were asleep. Marcus had told me at dinner that he wants to be a lawyer when he grows up. Beatrix had asked if lawyers help people. I'd said, the good ones do. I sat in the quiet and thought about the girl I was at 26. Signing a prenup I didn't read carefully enough. Marrying a man I didn't know completely enough. I thought about the woman who was 23, sitting in an apartment while a lawyer told her to disappear. I thought about Persephone, who brought me the folder not out of kindness, but out of self-preservation, and how sometimes the right thing gets done for the wrong reasons, and it still counts. I finished finished my coffee. I went inside. I locked the door. I didn't look back.